The hashtag is Spice Drive. It's very simple. It is your show. And we're going to be having an in-depth look at the digital service tax. So this afternoon, we speak to KRA Digital Economy Tax Office team leader, Nickson Omondi. He joins us live. And yes, you can stream and watch. Welcome to the show, Nickson.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Pleasure, Monique.
You know, many times when people hear KRA, they're thinking, can we actually have a conversation?
Yes, we can.
Very nice. Yeah. We've got a lot of questions, and one of the areas we're going to be looking at today is the digital service tax. And last year, this was introduced, and we want to understand why now.
Why now?
Yes.
Why not before?
Yes. Okay. Why this interesting conversation happening now, and where KRA is involved? Why are we having this conversation at this time?
The digital economy
yes.
As a whole,
yes,
and how it's been transformed
yes.
over the last few years,
right,
has been at the top of discussion by international entities.
Right.
So it's a global discussion, not just a Kenyan discussion. We have an organization known as OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is headquartered in Paris, France. And they have been spearheading the talk on how to harness revenue from the digital economy. It started way back in 2013. So this discussion is actually, it was supposed to be, ended last year, but because of COVID, it's still extended.
Right.
And many other countries have taken steps to implement part of what the OECD is talking about.
Right.
So Kenya is just part of the discussion and part of the countries, or a subset of the countries that have decided to go ahead and implement some of those recommendations, even as we wait for the, what we call the unified approach by the OECD. So the conversation, could not come at a better time than this, and especially with the entrance, of course, unfortunately, of COVID, that saw an increase in digitalization of many processes, including even how we work.
Right.
Yes. So I think the conversation came at the right time.
Right.
You see, there's also pressure on the government to provide social goods and services. So the government needs to, increase revenue collection.
Right.
Amid the pandemic and dwindling, economic activities. So this tax will go a long way in helping the government to realize what they had promised to do to the citizenry of this country. Again, why the conversation is interesting is that over time, we have come to realize that our laws, the way they are made, do not capture non-residents or foreigners who do business into the country.
Right. And
it's not just Kenya. It's actually a global way of how taxation laws are structured. We are borrowing from 1920s way of how things were happening. Then digitalization, I think, must have been a mirage.
Exactly.
But now it's a reality.
Right.
And it's actually happening. So we've the global the global village, to say so, has realized that non-residents do business in Kenya.
Right.
Through digital means, but they're not taxed.
Right.
But you and me, if you were to provide digital services, you'll actually pay tax.
Right.
So that creates an unfair, ground or level field is not there for people to compete fairly.
Right.
So that everybody is paying tax. If it's about pricing and you want to include tax as a price, then all of you should have, you should be treated equally. So what is happening is this tax is also going to level the playing field for both local digital service providers,
right,
and also international or foreign digital service providers.
Wow, this comes at an interesting time, and I like that you captured that. To think that this was never even an idea a few years ago.
Very true.
It is an opportune moment. Under which section of the law is DST chargeable?
Just a bit of background.
Yeah.
When the government saw it better to level the playing field for both residents and non-residents. First of all, there was a change in law under Section 3(2)(ca) of the Income Tax Act. Basically, for you to be taxed in a certain area, you need to be connected to that area. We call it in tax connecting factor or the nexus rule.
Right.
So we needed to have a connection between digital activities and Kenya, then you become taxed. So that section brought in the issue of connection. And then DST specifically then came, that was in 2019, the Finance Act 2019, that was effective from 7th of November 2019. Then the Finance Act 2020, that was effective from 1st of July 2020, now specifically brought in the issue of DST under Section 12E. So if you read Section 12E, it talks about a digital service tax to be paid or payable by both residents and non-residents who are supplying digital services or who derive income through a digital marketplace.
Right.
And then, of course, the Finance Act went further, which is now part of the law under the Income Tax Act, to clarify that a digital marketplace is a platform that connects buyers and sellers. So basically, it's Section 12E where DST falls.
Wow, this is interesting to note. I got a question earlier when I was telling the audience that you were coming in.
Sure.
Someone was saying in layman language, Monique, please ask, who exactly does DST target?
Monique, DST targets people who are providing a range of services.
Right.
So you'll allow me to answer the two questions.
Yes.
So that then it's captured properly.
Yes.
So for people, we are talking of residents and non-residents. So let me use layman language. Locals and foreigners. So if you are a local and you are providing digital services, you are supposed to pay DST at a rate of 1.5% of what you have earned.
Yes. So
by providing digital services.
This is content creators.
Yes, content creators is part of it. I wanted to come to that.
Yes.
If you are a foreigner supplying or providing digital services
Right.
to people who are in Kenya or people use your digital services,
Right.
we call them user is located in Kenya, then we also expect the foreigners to pay digital service tax. What are the range of services that we are talking about?
Right.
The service must be digital.
Right.
And it must be a service. So if it's a good, it's not subject to digital service tax because a good is not a service.
Right.
Okay. Now, the specific services include digital content creation, web hosting, cloud storage services. Okay. If somebody offers such, if you create websites for people, that's a digital service.
Right.
If you host others' websites, that is also a digital service. And therefore, whatever you are paid for doing that service or for providing that service is subject to DST. There are many others, such as software. So if you provide software to people, you'll be subject to digital service tax. Apps. Nowadays, phones are gone app way.
Right.
Applications. You download a certain app, whether you want to know the weather in Kisii.
Yes.
You are able to,
Right.
So if you are the creator of that app, or you are the provider of that app, maybe through a telco or as a person, and you are earning income through that, you're actually liable to digital service tax. We also have the social media influencers.
Right.
Okay. We know that social media influencers are people who have followers. They're actually rivaling Jesus. Okay.
It's a
having
whole
a following.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're also called disciples. we'll check that. But social media influencers, basically, because you have a wide following, so either the social media itself will pay you, the platform, and that is earning through a digital marketplace, or that's a digital service you're offering. And then there's also the issue of where entities approach you so that you can put up adverts or their brands.
Right.
Then people get to buy. By being influential, you also influence what people buy.
It's true.
Okay. So if that entity is going to pay you for putting up their product in your page as a kind of advertising, that's actually a digital advertising.
Right.
And therefore it's a digital service. You're also liable.
And there's been a lot of questions about that. Who is targeted? Who is exempt? And who is KRA talking to when they're talking about this particular tax? There's another question here.
Yes.
Some circles are opposed to the introduction of DST, and they argue that the new tax will increase the cost of doing business. And in the long run, the cost will be passed on to the customers. Is this the correct position? Can you demystify or state?
Allow me to start with the targeted people. Okay?
Yes.
If you're supplying a digital service or providing a digital service, you are the one who is to pay the digital service tax. It is not the consumer or the purchaser of your service. So we call it a self-assessment model, where it is you who will, you will determine how much you've earned through provision of digital services, and then you levy 1.5%, and you remit the same to the commissioner. On the issue about increase in prices, allow me to approach it this way.
Right.
Digital service tax is an income tax item. Taxes are usually based on profits. So if you look at it keenly, it's a tax on profits. And a tax on profits should not be passed on to consumers, because that's a direct tax. It's different from VAT and excise,
right,
which we are aware of. For residents specifically, if you are local, it's actually an advance tax. It is not an additional tax. Why? When you are earning money through a digital platform or you provide digital services, and at the end of the year, you earn, for example, 10,000. Okay?
Right.
And assume the 10,000 is your profits, to make it simpler. You are supposed to pay tax. Top range, 30%. So assume you are in the top range, 30%. So that should be about 3,000. That should be your tax, ordinarily, without a DST. But DST has come in as an advance tax, payable by 20th of every month after providing the services. So you'll be paying DST on a monthly basis. If assume you are paying 50 shillings every month on account of digital services, 1.5%, at the end of the year you shall have paid 600. What the law requires is you calculate your taxes, which are 3,000 in the example I was giving.
Yeah.
Then you deduct the 600 that you paid in advance on account of DST. The balance is now what you remit to the commissioner. So if you look at it, it's actually an advance tax, not an additional tax. And that's why it should not lead to increase in goods or services traded online. But for non-residents, we don't know what their tax structure is in their countries. So once they pay the DST, that will be the end of the story. There might be an element of double tax,
right,
but it depends with how they have structured their laws in their other countries that we might really not discuss for now, or we might have no control over. So basically, if you look at that, they should not lead to increase in prices. Yes.
I like that you set the record straight, because there's been that conversation, going around without people having a proper understanding of how it works and how you're planning to do this. So how much revenue is KRA targeting to raise through DST annually?
We are implementing two taxes under the digital economy. Apart from DST, there's another tax known as VAT on digital marketplace supply. If you look at the two, so from the digital economy, KRA is actually planning to collect about 3.4 billion. Yes.
Annually.
Annually. So for the 6 months that we are headed into, we actually planning to collect about a billion or 1 point something. Yes, about 1.7 billion from the digital economy. But I know as it's implemented, of course, I know many people are going to trade online. More digital services are coming in, and I'm sure we'll collect more in the future.
Right. Yes. I like the questions that I'm getting here. And, when someone is looking at, the residents and the non-residents,
yes.
Do you think that Kenyans, when they look at it as their only platform to transact, whether they're, transacting with foreigners and I like that you broke it down. Do you think this is encouraging? There's some people feeling that it's not a fair model that you're working with, because with the foreigners, it works a bit differently from when you're working with Kenyans. So is there room for more conversations with the people that are on these platforms to contribute on some things you can input in your structure?
Very true. Well put. You remember I've already said that digital service tax is not a new tax per se. It's not an additional tax to what you have been paying.
Right.
It's only that now you are paying your income tax earlier. Okay. So that will make it bearable a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. For non-residents, the government is providing a good economic environment.
Right.
Actually, if we were in chaos, and I'm sure we want to be, because of the good Kenyans, peace-loving Kenyans.
Yes.
They will not be deriving the income that they do derive.
Right.
And therefore, that is why it is only fair that they also contribute to Treasury, which provide the good economic environment and social services. So it puts everybody at par to contribute to the development of Kenya. That said, for laws to be, before laws become law, implementable law, there's a whole process. And there's a lot of stakeholder engagement and public participation as envisioned in the Constitution that take place. So yes, Kenyans were given an opportunity to, comment.
Right.
Yes, and give response on how they wished the tax to be done and whether the rate was comfortable with them. And even before the rate was arrived at, there was also, of course, it goes through Parliament. So Parliament decided, with a lot of other comments from Kenyans, whether that tax was proper, whether the rate was favorable, and how it is supposed to be applied was fair enough and easy to comply with. That's why we call it it's a simplified framework kind of tax that is being implemented. That also said, Kenyans still have an opportunity in the next budget cycle that will be read somewhere in April by the Cabinet Secretary of Finance to give their comments on how they wish to be taxed or treated for tax purposes. The problem is that some of us, sometimes you see in the newspapers, Gazette notice asking people to give comments on a certain law, and you just think that is a law for so and so.
Right.
It's actually our duty, you and me, to ask or to contribute to such. I remember ISPAC put up an advert on Monday. They're asking for comments on the next budgetary cycle on what Kenyans want changed in the law, or how they want to be treated in terms of tax and other, relevant laws. And the deadline, I think, is tomorrow.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe even the KTN have sent, because I know you have ISPAC members within the standard group. So it's actually an opportunity for your voice to be heard in terms of the lawmaking process of Kenya.
Fantastic. I mean, there's been a lot of misconceptions and people trying to decipher what, it means in layman's language. There's a lot of young creatives who are targeted in this DST, and the way you've broken it down, there's one question that has popped up here. It says, Monique, how can we ask questions online? How can we get in touch with Nickson Omondi if we have more questions?
Our doors are always open. And KRA has gone tremendously digital.
Yes.
We have a Twitter handle at KRA Care. You can drop your question there.
At KRA Care?
Yes, it will be handled. Occasionally we have Twitter chats. Yes, sometimes we're on Facebook, on YouTube. You can always drop your question and definitely we'll give you an answer. You can also write an email to us, KRA, at is it call center at kra.go.ke, and your question will be specifically addressed. We also have a unit, a team that is handling the digital economy with the email digital.economy@kra.go.ke. Your question will be properly addressed. Our phone lines are also available. You can always call KRA and the question will be directed to whoever is concerned. Or you can write a letter. Drop the letter, you have an acknowledgement, and within a month or less, you'll have your question addressed. Our doors are always open, and we never get tired of answering questions relating to tax.
And I see there's a lot of people willing to embrace this and understand it better, and also having that they participate and they can engage you is quite interesting. And
True.
Thank you so much, Nickson Omondi, for coming in and enlightening us as we continue to understand all about the digital service tax. And you've broken down step by step the differences and how all this came about, and also the entire world can see where we are.